Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the meeting emergency order, I'm confirming that we are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using Zoom or telephonically. Instructions have also been posted on the website of the Timberlane Regional School Board at timberlane.net/Zoom TRSB. If anybody has a problem, please call 382-6541, extension 3955. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there's anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Kat, can you take the roll call, please?
I am
here. I am alone in the room. There are other family members in the household.
Lee Doobie.
Sorry, mute button. I am here. I am alone in my home office.
Kim Farah.
I'm here. I'm alone in the house.
Barbara Keetka.
I'm present, alone in the residence.
Sheila Lowe's.
I am here and alone in the house.
Jack Walkemer.
I'm here. I am alone in the room, but there are other members of my family in the house.
John O'Neill.
I am present and alone in the room, and other people are in the household.
Kristen Savage.
I am here in my house with other members of the household present throughout the house.
Jennifer Silva.
I am here alone in my office with a family issue I've got to go attend to, so I'm present. I just have to excuse myself for a couple minutes. Thank you.
Dr. Cochran.
I am present, alone in my office. There's another family member in the house.
And Jenna Horan.
I'm here alone in the room, but there are other family members at my house.
Thank you very much.
If you could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Moving on to the approval of the minutes. There are actually two sets of minutes here. I'd like to actually try to do these both together. There's the 9/3/20 sealed non-public minutes. The board members, those are in your packet electronically, as are the hang on. You know what, let's do the September 3rd, 20 sealed minutes. I'm looking for a motion to unseal and approve those minutes.
So moved.
Sheila makes the motion.
Second.
Brian seconds. Kat, could you take a roll call vote on those minutes?
Mr. Boyle.
Yes.
Mr. Doobie.
Yes.
Dr. Farah.
Yes.
Mrs. Kishka.
Yes.
Ms. Lowe's.
Yes.
Mrs. Malcolmer.
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill.
Yes.
Mrs. Savage. And Mrs. Silva.
Okay, neither one of them responded, so that is 7-0. Okay. Now we are looking at to approve the September 17th non-public session. These are sealed minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any motion to open these minutes, or? These actually are not sealed minutes. We did not seal these minutes.
Correct.
So looking for a motion. So there's a motion and a second on the non-public meeting minutes. These are not sealed. All in favor, sorry, forgot. Kat, can you take the roll call vote?
Mr. Boyle,
Yes.
Mr. Doobie,
Yes.
Dr. Farah,
Yes.
Mrs. Kishka,
Yes.
Mrs. Lowe's,
Yes.
Mockmer,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Savage, and Mrs. Silva.
Okay, that passes 7-0. Now looking for a motion on the 9/17
Not
public
voting.
minutes.
What was it for?
Huh?
What was it for?
So moved.
Just a vote on the minutes.
Kristen, I think you
Kristen,
got
you're
it.
Oh,
Sheila makes the motion. Brian,
Second. Oh, sorry.
Barbara seconds. Kat, can you take the roll call vote? Sorry, I got a little distracted.
Mr. Boyle,
Yes.
Mr. Doobie,
Yes.
Dr. Farah,
Yes.
Mrs. Kishka,
Yes.
Ms. Lowe's,
Yes.
Mrs. Mockmer,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Savage,
abstaining.
and Mrs. Silva.
Okay, 7-0-1. Thank you. Moving on, Jenna, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good evening,
welcome.
everyone. So, at the Sandown TLC, they are practicing being mask heroes, as they call it, and being safe in schools, and it's going very well for all of them. Even the youngest students there are doing a great job wearing masks and being socially distant with one another. They have the school motto of always working as a team, and that has been nothing but evident from students and educators alike at that school. At Sandown North, the theme of the year is We Are the Village, and they are all very thoroughly enjoying having their village back together, whether it's in person or remote. They would also like to give a special shout out to Mr. Zig, Mr. Paul, and Mr. Josh for all of their hard work cleaning and sanitizing the schools to get them ready for everyone and keeping everyone safe. At Pollard Elementary School, they've had a wonderful start to the year for both remote and hybrid penguins, as the students are known. And even if it is different learning in a socially distant manner, the students are doing a great job following all the stickers and the paint on the floor and being socially distant from one another. And as always, the Pollard Penguins will swim as they want to be, as their motto is at the school. At Atkinson Academy, they welcome their new interim principal, Patrice Liff, to the Atkinson Academy community. The students are doing a great job both in person and remote. And as always, the Atkinson Academy students every day strive to capture the stars within. At Danville Elementary School, the students and teachers are learning and adapting to a very new and different school year as a community. All of the elementary schools extend their most sincere thanks to all of the members of the community that are working tirelessly as a community, especially the parents and the educators. At the middle school, this was their second week only of in-person learning, and they have been doing a great job doing in-person learning, but they've gotten a lot of practice learning new procedures and protocols while being on Zoom, and they are now pros at Zoom. They would like to welcome their new interim assistant principal, Dan Woodworth. And then as for the high school, a new sense of community has begun this year as we all start on this very new and at times overwhelming journey. But I commend the students, the educators, the parents, the administrators, and you, the school board, for all of the time that everyone has put in to make this year the success that it has been so far. I give my sincerest congratulations to all of the sports teams whose seasons are starting and who have begun playing games, all of the clubs and organizations that are starting up again, and I am so proud of the Timberland community as this year is starting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenna. And we're all proud of all our teachers and staff and students for rising to the occasion. So I appreciate that. Moving on, we have quite a few delegates and individuals. So Dean and Ken, I will just try to call out names that I have a list here. Is Mr. Blair available? if you could unmute Mr. Blair.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight. It's certainly appreciated. And I want to thank you all for all the hard work you guys have done so far. Applause to you guys for doing a great job and getting all the kids into a hybrid model. But I do feel we do still have some work to do. There are many kids and families who continue to struggle academically and emotionally under our current setup. This is certainly not a one-size-fits-all model. There is still a large subset, in fact, the largest subset of the district students and families whose needs are currently not being met under our current education model. The 42% of parents who chose 5 days in-person learning are being denied their choice, and they're not being denied an access to the education that they deserve. We need to begin discussions and planning for a phased return to full-time for those who choose that option. This echoes the petition sent to the board a month ago that called for this plan to return to 5 days learning based upon community infection, data, and metrics. For this reason, it's imperative that the board begins a negotiation and an evaluation for a new MOU with the TTA and the TTSU. The current MOU offers no scenario to return to 5 days this school year at all. The inclusion of the wording, as long as there are any precautions related to COVID, the inclusion of that wording in itself ensures there is no possible way that we can return to school this year under the MOU. It is stated right there. We now have data from I'm sorry, I skipped to the wrong page here. This MOU does in fact though make many concessions for the TTA and the TSU. However, it appears as if the most important stakeholder in this MOU was in fact not our kids. This board has a duty to meet the needs and education of this district. The largest subset of this district, those choosing 5 days, are being denied this choice by the wording of this MOU. New Hampshire has been below all state metrics for many consecutive months now, and Rockingham County has been below all metrics for level of community transmission ever since the day those metrics were released. The positivity rate, the number of new infections, the hospitalization rate, all of those metrics, we have never been above any one of those metrics from the day they were released. In fact, we've been as much as 4 to 5 times below all these metrics. Other things include the fact that CDC is recommending return to school, AAP is recommending return to school, and there are a lot of schools around us that are open 5 days. We published the list, and there are many, many more school districts that have realistic plans for phased return to 5 days. It can be done, and it is being done successfully all around us. We now also have data from Brown University showing minimal evidence of coronavirus spread in K through 12 populations in schools. In fact, this data is from 550 schools in 46 states. And this data shows the rate of infection among educators in this subset was 0.15. And for students, it was 0.076. And the conclusion of this study says the evidence suggests a return to class this fall may not be nearly as risky as administrators once thought it would be. And this subset of data is including nationwide, all the states, all 46, including all of the hotspots. And as everyone knows, New Hampshire rates are among the best in the world and the lowest in our country. But this subset included all of the states, and it proves that the risk is very, very low if the proper precautions are followed. New Hampshire has consistently been ranked one of the lowest risk states ever since the COVID epidemic broke out. We have always been and continue to be one of the safest states. The conditions of the MOU have certainly changed. We now have state metrics for schools and nationwide data on infection rates post-opening. If this agreement is truly in good faith, then we must sit with the TTA and TSU to renegotiate that based upon the change in circumstances. The petition put forth before this board speaks to that. The largest group in the district speaks to that. The immunological data speaks to that. The CDC speaks to that. The AAP speaks to that. And the state guidance guiding schools speak to that. The Surgeon General also speaks to the fact that there are a lot of collateral damage to these students and they should be in school. All of these things dictate that we renegotiate this MOU in good faith and make a common sense plan to return to 5 days based upon community infection data. And anything less than this puts the needs of the union ahead of the kids and the families in this district. We're all looking for you guys to lead us out of this. We understand you have staffing concerns. We understand it's not easy, but we have to put the kids first. And these kids deserve an education in person. As long as the numbers are safe, they deserve it. And we hope you can help us find a path to get us there. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. Next is Mr. Goodman.
Yes, I'm here. Can you
Thank
hear
you.
me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All right. First, I
From
want to say,
Atkinson, I'm sorry. And Mr. Blair was also from Atkinson. I'm sorry. Just want to state your name for the recording secretary.
sure. My name is Chris Goodman. I am a new resident of Atkinson. We moved here from Seattle during the height of this pandemic, from the very first school district in the country to close down. So my kids have been out of school since March of last year. We came to New Hampshire specifically because of all that it has to offer, not only educationally, but quality of life, medical services, and job offerings. I come here tonight to speak not only as a parent of children in the school system, but also as a professional. I am a pediatric occupational therapist with 21 years of experience. And from this aspect, I address the board, administration, and teachers tonight. I want to thank the board for accepting and agreeing to follow a standard set of metrics for reentry back into schools. The numbers and current metrics speak for themselves, and I will not spend time going over these. Instead, I want to touch on a significant issue that has yet to be discussed, to my knowledge. This pandemic is a significant and unprecedented event in our lives that has placed a significant strain and stress on our systems, finances, institution, and most importantly, our children. I want to present some statistics to you tonight from the CDC as of June 15, 2020. 9.4% of children aged 2 to 17 years have received an ADHD diagnosis. 7.4% of children aged 3 to 17 years have a diagnosed behavior problem. 7.1% of children aged 3 to 17 have diagnosed anxiety. 3.2% of children aged 3 to 17 years have a diagnosed depression. 1 in 54 children has been diagnosed or identified with autism spectrum disorder, according to the estimates from the CDC's Autism and Developmental Disorders Monitoring Network. Now, the way statistics work, these are actually from 2018. So in 2 years, in 2022, we will actually see these numbers rise, and they have been steadily rising since 2009. The current model of education is not working for these children. In fact, it is more than likely causing significant increases in anxiety and depression with impact health and well-being, as well as their educational outcomes. This current situation can be clinically defined as an early life stress, or in the literature, it is referred to as an ELS. An ELS is defined as a broad spectrum of adverse exposures during early childhood, late childhood, and adolescence. These include childhood trauma, maltreatment, neglect, separation, abuse, parental loss, and starvation. Our schools play a crucial role in identifying these key issues as children are in classrooms. Over 30 to 40% of the adult population have experienced some form of ELS. Furthermore, ELS during critical phases of juvenile brain development have been associated with reduced adaptability to stress in adult life and enhanced vulnerability to disease. Significant trauma, reoccurrent and/or prolonged stress have a cumulative toxic effect on the child. Many adult diseases should be viewed, according to the literature, as developmental disorders that begin early in life. The fact that persistent health disparities arose with poverty, discrimination, or maltreatment could have been reduced or alleviated from toxic stress in childhood. Low socioeconomic status is associated with reduced access to educational support or parental involvement in education. This is a known fact and has been studied and well documented in the research. How much more relevant is this statement in times like these when parents are having to make the difficult decision to keep a roof over their kids' heads, the lights on, internet paid for, food on the table, or stay home full-time to become their child's navigator, teacher, tech person, and still maintain balance in their own stress and anxiety levels? This is a difficult task for two parents and near impossible in a single parent household. Household chaos is associated with sensitive and harsh parenting. Both are predictors of childhood misconduct. The lack of full-time in-person schooling and the stress that is creating may have dire consequences that will be felt for years to come inside the classrooms by teachers and administrators. Our middle school and high school kids, they experience stress and adversity in a whole different way, and these children are especially susceptible to adverse outcomes. Again, the CDC stats are from 2018. We do not have stats for 2020. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the US. Suicide rates have increased in nearly every state from 1999 to 2016. In New Hampshire alone, during this time period, suicide rates have climbed 38 to 58%. This does not reflect adult versus pediatric rates. However, to my broader point, these stats are early life stressors and adverse childhood experiences and are only exacerbated by our current situation. I have personal experience with this. With children on my caseload whose parents committed suicide, with friends and colleagues whose family members have committed suicide. So I see and feel the impact. I have not even touched on the most vulnerable population among our school-age children. These are the children on IEPs. They're falling further behind without the in-person learning that they desperately and legally are required to have. There is a high incidence of anxiety among individuals with autism, and this situation is only making it worse. These children, as do all children, require structure, routines, and stability in their environments to learn in the present and not fall farther into their own worlds by disengaging in their learning. I see this on a daily basis in my position as an OT, and this is highly preventable. I've been evaluating and treating children since the start of this pandemic, and have that previously they were stable, and now they're in crisis. Sleep has been disrupted. Behaviors are out of control. They stopped eating, self-harm, admission from self-harm, regression of motor skills, regression of language, unable to self-regulate. And this was not a slow regression, but a sudden and drastic change 4 to 6 weeks into this pandemic. It's like they fell off a cliff. Where's their safety net? School's gone. That was their safety net.
Mr. Goodman, Mr. Goodman, I'm going to have to ask you to finish up. I'm not sure if you're aware, but typically we limit delegates.
Yes, I'm finishing up with my last statement. That was what I was
Thank you,
about to
sir.
say. If I had more time, I could go over the research studies. I'm happy to provide those to the board of where I got this information. More than happy to cite all my references. So I'm asking, what's the plan for moving forward? Now that we are in a hybrid for all of our kids, why do we not start with our youngest learners and IEP kids moving to 4 days in person with deep cleaning on Wednesdays? What is the plan for these children? Thank you.
Thank you. And I certainly hope that you will continue to listen after, because there will be definitely discussion about the plan and what we are doing to move more students into the buildings. Sorry, I lost my list here. Next is Ms. Borba.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go
Perfect.
ahead.
My question is this: where are these students going My answer is that they are on, oops. My answer is that they are on a path and it is not Robert Frost's path. It is a fork in the road that they did not choose. They are holding their breath for a decision that you and I know will not come. The decision to open schools. The metrics show this is what we need, what needs to be done. What are we waiting for? How do you justify these closures? Safety, please tell me how these decisions are not purely union propaganda. I'd honestly love to hear how the pushback from the unions are not a part of these decisions. Please identify one narrative that is not born from union demands. Is there any evidence that the union is acting in a bipartisan manner? The answer is no. The entire situation has been politicized and has been hijacked by a union that saw their opportunity and struck when they knew they had an advantage due to the instability and fear. If I had one question, it would be, how are you opposing the unions in the name of our students? In the name of providing taxpayers their benefits, how are you supporting the full growth of students? Are you providing the mental and social support that all students require? Are you breaking under the pressure of unions, or are you fighting for the education of children who deserve what children received only 2 years before this? How are today's students less deserving? Why don't we all put down the remote or our phones and start looking at reality? Schools can open safely. This is a fact. Teachers can do their jobs in person. This is a fact. Is it the same as before? No. Would any reasonable person expect any different? No. Do nurses ignore protocols? No. Do grocery store workers ignore recommendations? No. But what do? They show up. Why? How could they when death awaits? Do they all write their wills and buy their tombstones daily? No, they don't. They aren't opportunistic and revved and manipulated by insane union leaders. Why? First of all, if they pulled some garbage like this in the real world, they would be fired. Imagine that, fired for not doing your job. All of the jobs I've ever had in this odd requirement. It's doing your job. Casinos survive, restaurants survive, arcades survive. Let me guess, the union survive, fists held high while children fold, cry, and diminish. Is this the legacy that you guys want to leave? The administration that allowed one party to potentially crush the futures of very population that are paid to encourage? What side of history do you want to be on? I wish you luck. You have the weight of history weighing on your shoulders. I hope you choose in favor of your student body. And parents of the Timberlane District, I'm happy if this works for your kids. However, I know it doesn't work well for everyone. For us, this was not the case. For many in the majority, this is the case here. Please feel free to join us, Timberlane Parents for Education on Facebook, and we're more than happy to support you. Thank you.
Kim, you muted.
Okay. Ms. Bizen from Sandown, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to, I think I mentioned this before, but I know that there are staffing issues, but we're a very large district. And what I'm really hoping for is flexibility in opening, and I don't feel that it should be an all or nothing situation. I don't think we should be having policies for, for the whole district wide when it's high school, middle school, elementary schools, kindergarten. There are such different schools in different communities with different age ranges. So I would like to see flexibility and not an all or nothing. For example, if we can't get the entire district to open up, but say the elementary schools can open up because of staffing, I would hate to see that we delay one school from opening because they all can't open at the same time. I don't know where the staffing issues lie, but I would like to see flexibility, and where we can open, where we have the staffing, that we should do that. If there's an elementary school in one of these elementary schools, if they can open, let's do that. The other thing I did want to echo was that I am really concerned that kids on IEPs are not having their needs met and not having the option for being in school 5 days. And I would like to see a phased approach. The other thing that I wanted to sort of echo on also was, and bring up another point, was that I know we haven't been open in the hybrid model for long. So I get the argument that we haven't been open for long. So it's crazy to talk about opening fully at this point. But my point would be that it takes many, many weeks of planning and negotiating to get to the next step. So we shouldn't be delaying a plan for reopening, and we shouldn't be delaying negotiations, because the planning process and the negotiation process could take months. So we really need to be on it now if we have a hope of opening at all. So that the last thing that I wanted to just sort of, I know you can't answer me right now, but I'm not aware of if we applied for the CARES Act funding and if we received it, and if we received it, how was it spent? When was it spent? I would really like to know that information. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And we will try to get that question addressed later on in the meeting. Thank you. Moving on to Mr. Bacareza from Sandown. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong.
No, you did perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is John Vacarez of Sandown, and I felt compelled to call in tonight and based on things that I have read, seen, and heard about. And it really came to a head when we looked at the debate that just took place, and it was really a forum of criticism, complaints, and rude remarks. And I think we, as a group, have become accustomed and acclimated to believing that that's okay without looking at celebrating our successes. And we ask you as a board to do this. 6.5 months ago, a worldwide pandemic reached our doorsteps. Schools across the country went into emergency education mode without time, training, or anything of that nature. Look at how much we have learned in this period of time. We all now know what asynchronized and synchronized education is. We can all determine the difference between a Google Meet, a Zoom, Google Classroom, and in-person education. Terms like Class Dojo, Flippity, Bitmoji, Flipgrid, Boomcards, Kahoots, and Screencastify, which used to be terms out of a Dr. Seuss book, are now parts of our regular lives. That is a huge learning curve. We learn as individuals through trial and error, and our students grow not by getting things right all the time, but by working through problems and finding solutions in multiple ways. It is the basis of a growth mindset. No longer is it I can't, it is I haven't yet. Our teachers are in the midst of the greatest professional development model in the history of education. Many, if not most, in 6.5 months prior, ever held a Google meeting, and now it is a basic lifestyle that they do every single day. They not only are teaching kids, caring for them, and being their supports, they are also fielding concerns from parents who did not ask to be put in this situation, are not happy about this situation, but are learning much the same way. That is a huge success, not a failure. Sports teams played for the first time in the past 10 days. Other school districts do not have that taking place. Another victory. Nothing is normal, but schools are the ones who are charged with giving a sense of normalcy to our students. Education is messy, it's frustrating, and it's completely worth it. The facts that my children, 3 of them, 2 at Sandown North and 1 at Timberlane Middle School, are being given an opportunity to learn in multiple ways is only a good thing. Lack of resources, time, training, and staff are hurdles in this process, but they are hurdles that the schools and teachers and administration and school board are working to overcome. I myself am a principal in a school district with 12,000 students. I have a staff of 150 staff members and 1,270 students. While I cannot ease their enormous burden, I can only applaud their efforts. I ask that you all do the same. It will make a huge difference for the administration, for the staff, and most importantly, the students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Pierce from Atkinson? Dean, do we have Ms. Pierce from Atkinson?
She's connected. She just needs to unmute.
Dean, can you unmute her?
No.
Yeah, he should be able to unmute her, I think.
There it is. Oh, she's gone.
I did not get the option to unmute her.
Okay, let's move on and I'll try to come back around. Mr. Collins from Danville?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Hi, Mr. Collins, just go ahead.
Great, thank you. Sorry about that. August 11th, a parent survey was completed and the results showed that a majority, 58% of parents, did not want 5-day in-person education. August 13th, the school board approved instructional model options that included the current hybrid model with cohorts or remote learning. A full return to 5-day in-person instruction was not recommended by the administration and was not approved by the school board. The school board then asked parents to commit for 1 semester to either the hybrid or the remote learning instructional model. We were told we couldn't change the instructional model until the semester or trimester was over. August 14th, parents were asked to fill out a form committing students for the first semester or trimester to an instructional model. The 5-day in-person model was appropriately not an option. When the school board approved the instructional models on August 13th, the New Hampshire 7-day average infection rate was 25 per day and trending down. Today, it sits at 37 per day, 50% higher than it was 6 weeks ago, and it's trending up. At the September 17th school board meeting, an HVAC report was reviewed and released that shows serious deficiencies within many classrooms, with many more classrooms left untested. All classrooms should be tested and compliant with the minimum standards to keep everyone healthy and safe. Although really late in the game, I'm hopeful that information is on the way and will be available to all parents soon. Please do not rush things. Students have only been in school for 3 weeks, some only for 1 week. Things are going well so far. If there is a push to return to 5 days, we may be shooting ourselves in the foot, resulting in increased infections and quarantines, forcing us into remote instruction without an in-person option, something that is currently happening at many school districts across New Hampshire. Honor the commitment you ask parents to make. Hold off on any changes in instructional models until the start of a new semester or trimester. Survey the parents as you did before if you think a change in the plan is warranted. The safety of the students, teachers, support staff, and administration should be the top priority. When it's not, everything else is at risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Moving on, Ms. Whelan from Plastow, WHELN.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, please go ahead.
Shelley Whalen, Plastow. So here we are again. It's been 2 weeks since we've all been sitting in front of each other. I think a lot of us are anxiously awaiting some new information regarding the district's intent to reopen based on the acceptance of the state guidelines. I'm just here reiterating the main concern I have for my kids. I'm just asking that we please work towards a full reopen. Our children really need to be with their peers on a regular basis. They need to be socialized. The isolation is really starting to set in for a lot of kids right now. Their emotional and mental well-being depends on reopening. It's incredibly difficult for a school to appropriately identify the individual child's needs when the child spends more time working behind a computer than in person. It's not a question. Our data supports all of the parents who are asking for you to execute a full reopening. I speak for myself here when I say that it seems the CDC guidelines are being either disregarded or perhaps misunderstood. I urge everybody to reread those because they do say 6 feet or masked when it's not possible to be 6 feet apart. Based on this, it does seem like we would be able to accomplish getting these kids in school full time and probably very safely. Timberlane's own mask wearing rules are already in place, and that is to remain masked at all times in the buildings, something that everybody's been following. But that's not a guidance that was even given by the CDC or the state. These kids can definitely be closer together if they're masked. I hope you consider this, and I hope you consider this is not a spacing issue. We ask you to consider the recent right to know that we sent out on Monday to you. We just want to know some additional answers. We did have many suggestions also for consideration. We as parents, we're not here to cause problems. We just want to be involved. And we feel communication with appropriate lead time is really necessary. I know the subject of PPE availability has come up, and many people have mentioned that there may not be the appropriate amount. I don't know how much news anybody was watching before this Zoom session, but Sununu just announced tonight that PPE should not be a limitation for holding in-person learning because the state will actually be able to help districts get access to PPE. And quoting him, he said almost immediately. So I hope that's a consideration moving forward as well. Our TTAs taught us that really our only means of being heard are banding together, but for some reason, it seems like the TTA as a group has more accommodations being met than us as parents. And somewhere along the line, that really needs to be looked at. Parents are a huge part of this equation. My kids and many other kids' vitality depend on the school board, administration, and the TTA aligning to provide an education that is both meaningful and valuable. When I look out in front of me, I see a group of normal, everyday people who hold a lot more power over my kids' education than I do. During the last school board meeting, one of the members mentioned that a lot of you school board members have full-time jobs outside of this, and we totally understand that, as do many of the parents who are working and managing an entire school day. We're all multitasking, and we're all putting in as much as we have as a group. Please know that we really do appreciate the work that you're doing and the time that you're putting in here. Some of us parents who have been speaking regularly have formed a group called Timberlane Parents for Education. And as I've said before in speaking, that we've received a lot of backlash, and that, you know, can happen anytime you stand up for something. But we're just really standing up to advocate for these kids and to support a common sense, data-driven approach for reopening. Please keep in mind, my kids' education is funded to this school system. We're relying on you, whom we have all voted for, to represent our kids and what they need and what is in their best interest. So please, we just ask you to do what's right. We thank you for your efforts and thank you for hearing us. Our kids need their teachers in person, and our kids really need you to fight for their education. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Martin from Plastow.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead, please.
Corinne Martin, Plastow, New Hampshire. First, I want to show gratitude to TRSB, the interim superintendent, TRSD administration, teachers, support staff, and all community members. We're all going through a collective trauma right now. Change, resilience, adaptation, integration, and perseverance are all important attributes right now. Normalcy bias, confirmation bias, and cognitive dissonance are all attributes that we should be addressing as an individual. We teach our kids all of this through day-to-day living. Darwin spoke of adaptation. Everything is energy. Children feed off of the energy of the adults around them, and people feed off of each other. We can all begin to work together to show patience, awareness of our own mindsets and our own emotions, and know that we are in uncharted waters, and uncharted waters create strong sailors and strong swimmers. Keep swimming. Be aware of where you're taking frustrations out on others or blaming others for things that are outside of their control. Be aware of where you are adding undue stress onto other people who are trying to do the best that they can. Our children are watching. We have beautiful weather and scenery in New Hampshire. We're coming into a season where we have leaf peepers come from literally all over the world to see our beautiful trees that are outside of our back doors. It could serve everybody to take a step outside, take a deep breath, recenter themselves, and to recognize that we do live in a beautiful world. New Hampshire is a great state to live in. Our data and our metrics for COVID have been great so far. We would be ignorant not to recognize that Haverhill, Massachusetts, Methuen, Massachusetts, North Andover, Lawrence, Dracut, and Lowell, following all the way down 495, have all turned into red zones. For people who stay in New Hampshire, that may not be a big deal. Me, I'll cross into that Massachusetts line every day, and my children are in Haverhill sometimes. Everyone in the world has had change that they did not anticipate or expect. Let's all have flexibility, grace, and keep going with empathy and compassion. We have had over 200 days since life flipped us on its head Friday the 13th of March. Please be aware of pandemic fatigue and your own mental and emotional state. Breathe. Relax the vagus nerve down the center of your body. Relax your jaw. Breathe. All we can do is keep going and to keep making efforts to stay happy, healthy, safe, and loved. Please remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs and know that we are all trying. Stress is not beneficial to anyone, and I know that we are all seeking to move forward. I didn't want to be the one to speak rhetoric or to repeat what's already been said. I just want to say thank you and keep going. This is symbolic of the chaos theory. We can prevail. Our children will take our lead with our adjustments, adaptation, and perseverance. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to go back. Is Ms. Pierce back on? I did miss her. Dean? Okay, I'll move on to Coral Hampy. Oh, go ahead, Dean.
Yeah, she was not available.
Okay, thank you. Last is Coral Hampy. Danville?
Good evening. Coral
Hi.
Hampton Danville, President of the Timberlane Teachers Association. I am a middle school teacher, and I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say that we were psyched to have our students back in the building. It is so nice to hear their voices, see their eyes, and see their personalities reflected in their choice of masks. It's not a perfect situation, but I can guarantee the teachers everywhere want nothing more than to have their students back in the classroom. I offer a heartfelt thank you to the members of our community who have stepped in to help us reopen. It hasn't been an easy walk through the jungle, but we are tiger strong and we can overcome anything together. Speaking of reopening schools, I would like to clarify a common misconception about the union. The reopen plan has 3 phases: 100% remote, hybrid, and 100% back to school. The only group that can decide which phase of the plan we are in is the district. From the MOU, number 2, it is expressly understood by the parties that it is the sole authority of the Timberlane Regional School Board and/or district to approve reopening plans and procedures, and that this MOU is meant to address the impact of the board's decisions which necessitate negotiation over those issues. The Teachers Association does not have the ability to block or hold up any decisions about which phase of the district chooses. We will continue to say that we support any phase based on the metrics so long as it is implemented safely. We look forward to working with the district on a new MOU. Therefore, I ask the members of the public, please stop blaming the union. We are advocating for the safety of our students and staff. We are not the ones holding us back. That stated, we do have a few follow-up questions to the Lawson Group report of the HVAC systems. These questions were submitted last week and we have not received answers. However, I do see that the HVAC systems are on the agenda tonight and perhaps the answers will be provided. These are the questions we have. Will the PAC be tested? Will all rooms be tested? Will rooms be retested? What are the new numbers for the airflow in the rooms and buildings that have received repairs? And why are the cafeterias not tested? Will they be tested? Kids are without masks in the cafeterias while seated and eating. I'm sure we can all agree that 2020 is a year we could have skipped. No one could have controlled what we face. What we can control is how we react. The negativity towards teachers is heartbreaking. We want the best for your kids, and it's discouraging to hear these attacks every other week. In a world where you can be anything, be kind. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to current business. And the first item on the agenda is the school reopening plan information action. I'm looking at this more as an update on where we are, where we're going, and the board will also be probably looking to take some action here. So I think Mrs. Kanotis, I think you're in the board's packet. There's a summary on increasing elementary on-site instruction that you put together. If you could just briefly give the highlights of that for everyone, that would be appreciated, for the public especially, as to where we are and where we're headed.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. So we have started since the first day of school at the elementary level a slow and purposeful increase to students in school 4 days a week, starting with our most vulnerable populations. As of the 17th, the last school board meeting, we had moved a number of students into school 4 days a week who required intensive programming. As of today, we have included 15 special education students 4 days a week. On Monday, we are reopening pre-K 4 days a week, so they will be in school for their full program, as our preschoolers are already. And we project out to the 19th, where we will have more than 40 special education students in school 4 days a week across the buildings. And also we will be bringing back all of our kindergarten students on the 19th of October to a full 4 days. They will still have 1 day remote because that is the building cleaning day on Wednesdays. But we are slowly moving through groups of students that we are increasing. And I think it's important for the public to know that we have 15 still open positions for para-educators that we're trying to fill and actively recruiting, looking for. And so it is a balance between unfilled positions and making sure that we have appropriate staffing to cover those students. And as we increase, as we hire, we brought a para-educator on today and we brought more special ed kids back into the building. So we are continuing to look at that process and evaluate day by day.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Allaire, did you have any other updates?
No, other than that we have started the process at the elementary level, but we have ongoing conversations as a team and are working with our building principals at the secondary level as well to see at what point we can begin a phase-in process to model what elementary has started as well. Our staffing levels are a little bit more impacted at the middle and high school levels. I think you're aware of that. We were just able to open grade 7 and 8 and grade 6 last week. So we're in a good place. We are, though, actively looking at what we can do to continue that process and bring in more students progressively. We're trying consciously to not move faster than the system can handle. You know, the last thing we want is to move too quickly and to have that result in a need to go fully remote for any reason. So it is an ongoing process. We are constantly engaged in conversations on how to move forward. So to, acknowledge, I just want to be sure to acknowledge that for our public as well. And I'll let Dr. Cochran speak if he has anything else to add as well.
And would it be fair to say that in order to move towards bringing more students back to the school, that it would behoove the board to take an action to recommend that the superintendent develops a plan to bring all students back to the school here within the next 2 weeks to a month, something feasible? Dr. Cochran, I'll let you answer that question.
The way we started out working on the hybrid plan was to look at room sizes, student numbers, and determine, what the furniture in the room would be, that sort of thing. I think if the board gives us a charge to develop an implementation plan, it'll take multiple weeks. We'll start with the data on classes. What would that look like in terms of all students back, given the percentage of students we have that are not remote? Look at class sizes, look at staffing. I suspect that after we go through the tedious work of measuring classes, what does furniture add, that sort of thing, the hard part is going to be the staffing. We're working very hard. I know I'm getting updates every day of applicants for positions. We've got more applicants for daily substitute positions. We've had more applicants for para positions. At the same time, we still have incoming requests for leave and that sort of thing. We're at this point catching up. We're adding more hires that will, it may have a cost over time. We have completed a possible agreement with the TSSU that would allow non one-on-one paras to act as proctors, that would allow us to take advantage of the fact that paras already know the students, know the teachers, know the routines in the building, and we have an ability to hopefully leverage their experience and their abilities at less cost than the pandemic floaters, which would be a good combination, something that we've discussed for a while and would be on the table. But essentially, I think we draw out a step-by-step roadmap of where we're going, and my recommendation is that we start at elementary and move up the grade levels. And staffing will be the key.
Okay, and would it be reasonable for the board to expect this at the next meeting?
I think that's more than reasonable.
Okay, so I would like to entertain a motion to direct the superintendent to develop a plan to bring all students back to the school.
Could we define all students as all those who have not chosen remote?
Correct, all those that have not chosen remote, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Second.
Makes that,
Question.
wait, Sheila makes a motion, Sheila seconds, go ahead, Jen.
I didn't.
Oh, I thought I heard you. Did somebody, who?
I seconded.
Lee, sorry, Lee, I can't see you on my dashboard. Lee, sorry.
Okay. When I was looking, and I can't see it because it's down, but the survey that went out to parents, I don't know if one of you can, what was the question? What were parents asked? As far as, were they asked to return it if they intended remote, or if there was a question about busing, or if they wanted to return in person, or did they want to return hybrid? I don't remember what the questions on the survey was.
Does anybody have that?
Hi, Jen. It was just if they wanted to go remote. We put in that survey that if they wanted the hybrid model, that they did not have to return that survey to us.
So only if
that
they
makes
wanted,
sense. Correct.
yeah. And so was the hybrid like, was it if you want in person, don't return it, or if you want hybrid, don't return it? Or was it just if you want remote, please return it?
If it was, no, we defined it as the hybrid blended learning, 2 days a week. So we did define that was the default plan.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion on that motion? If not, Kat, can you take a roll call vote?
Kim, so just want to say, this is
I'm
for
sorry,
the
I
plan.
can't see everybody on my dashboard, so pipe up. I need to change my view here. Now I can see everybody. Go ahead, Barbara.
Yeah, so this is to get the plan for going back
Correct.
4 to 5
Yes,
days a
this
week.
is not,
And
yes.
this is not going to be the implementation, just so that parents know that one of the things that we've brought up before is that we want to have predictability and be able to give parents time to plan. Right?
Correct, correct. And I would not envision that in 2 weeks that we would have the staffing to come back 100% of the students that are not choosing to be remote.
The conversations that we had so far is to move forward with the bringing back of more students on IEPs and provide those 5 services, hopefully 4 days a week. We'll build that up the elementary level. And what we're going to do is overlap those 2 processes. So as we continue to bring more and more identified students back and go proceed up the grade levels, we'll also be planning for that full return for all students at all grade levels. So it's not we're going to do one and then start the other. We'll overlap the 2 processes, work on both at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? If not, I will ask Kat to take a roll call.
Mr. Boyle,
Yes.
Mr. Doobie,
Yes.
Dr. Farah,
Yes.
Mrs. Kishka,
Yes.
Ms. Lowe's,
Yes.
Mrs. Mockamer,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Savage,
Yes.
Mrs. Silva.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The next thing in the agenda packet is recommended changes to the 2021 school calendar. When we added professional development days at the beginning of the year, and somebody, Sandy or Dr. Cochran, correct me if I'm wrong, what we did not do was adjust the quarter end dates. So we're looking for approval to get the adjustment so that the dates of the quarter ends will adhere to the changes that were made in the calendars. So you're looking for us to entertain a motion to make that change, correct?
Yes.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, Barbara?
I was just going to say, can we share the calendar so people at home will understand what the changes we're making?
Yes, does somebody have that up? That
Mr.
wants to share?
Peterson may have that
Yep.
at his fingertips.
If you give me a moment, I can pull it as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Not sure if that's what you're looking for.
Yes, that's what we're
Yes.
looking for. So we're just looking, there are some shifts of a few days to quarter ends and trimester ends because of the original date of school calendar and professional development days. So would somebody like to make a motion to accept the changes to the 2021 calendar?
So moved.
Barbara makes a motion.
Second.
Sheila seconds.
Kim, can I just ask one question?
Go ahead.
Before we go any further? That's all we're doing is changing trimester dates and semester dates, am I correct?
Well, quarter dates.
These have stayed the same, everything else has stayed the same. Okay, thank you. I'm just want to clarify it out loud.
Kat, can you take the roll call vote on that, please?
Mr. Boyle,
Yes.
Mr. Doobie. Mr. Doobie?
Mute.
I'm sorry. Yep, my mute is not cooperating. Yes.
Dr. Farah?
Yes.
Mrs. Kishka?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mrs. Muckamore? Yes. Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Savage?
Yes.
Mrs. Silva?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The next thing in the packet, does somebody have the executive summary for the facilities HVAC that they can put up on the screen? So as board members know, we contracted with Lawson, the Lawson Group to conduct a ventilation assessment. And that data has already been put out for public information. Board did request that the superintendent and his staff address this in more detail. And so what you're seeing here is an executive summary. Some of the actions that have been taken subsequent to this is that we are moving from a 3-month filter change schedule to a 1-month filter change schedule that involves about 500 filters. There was remedial action. There were 2 air handling units, one at the high school and one at Sandown North, that had issues that were probably resulting in some of those low room exchange air rates. So those have now been assessed. The Director of Facilities is looking on recommendations for air purifiers, ionizers for classrooms that don't meet the ASHRAE guidelines. And we are looking to schedule air testing on a regular basis. One of the things that was done when the Lawson Group came in was that we have had the district HVAC technician take airflow measurements at the same time that their technicians were, to validate the instruments that we're using against the instruments that the Lawson Group was using. And both those airflow measurements were very close together. I don't have the data right here. So we are continuing to work to improve the airflow. There was a question about filters. The Lawson Group did agree that we should not go to a smaller particulate filter because we were bringing in external air, and those would only be recommended for air that's recirculating within a building. So, and in fact, that would probably decrease our air flow rates as we try to move air through the rooms. Another request that was made by the board was a list of all HVAC systems to include the building and year installed. That is also here. Part of the reason that request was made is that the CIP committee will be convening next week, and we will be looking at priorities for the upcoming capital requests in the budget. And I would anticipate, based on this data, which the board has just gotten, and the age of some of these air handling units, which some of them are quite old, that we will be moving as quickly as possible to move those forward as priorities for the district. So there's been quite a bit of work. There will be frequent airflow measurements taking place in the buildings. As we said, we'll be looking to reassess how to get rooms that are not having as much circulation or room air exchange up higher. I think Sandown North would be the first one reassessed, but that was there was a broken belt on one of the air handlers, so we should be able to, my guess is there would have been some improvement. So I don't know if Mr. Paradis is on, or Mr. Dowd, if you want to add anything more to that. These documents will be available to the public after the meeting.
Hi, Kim, it's Gary.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Just one other recommendation, after talking to the in-house HVAC tech. The last time these systems were balanced was roughly 15 to 20 years ago. So
could you explain what balancing means?
Absolutely. Each room on the low velocity has a damper, which was set by a company that had come in to balance rooms. So each of them should have basically the same amount of airflow or exchange rates. Obviously, from the Lawson report, you see some are a lot higher, some are a lot lower. I know over the 15 years or the 20 years that it's been done, I know that rooms have been divided or offices have been added, things like that. So I recommend maybe bringing that company back in and rebalancing the system to today's standards where, you know, I don't know if the footprint hasn't changed, but the interior walls might have changed and it hasn't been balanced since. So that's kind of my recommendation on that, to see if we can get these rooms. You know, you may have room, I'm going to just throw out a number, 100 and 102 that are next to each other. If one's lower than the other, you know, maybe by balancing it, we can get that system to be relatively the same.
I certainly wouldn't be against that, but that means you need to have airflow measurements in all your classrooms.
And that is correct. And that is what we are, after speaking with Dr. Cochran, we're hitting the rooms right now that are on the Lawson report to see if we've, by changing the filters, fixing the belt and the motor, bring those air exchange rates up. But after all of that has been done, we're going to go classroom to classroom and check the entire district.
Okay, so I would like to request that the board, well, go ahead, Dr. Cochran, before I make this request. Go ahead.
In conversations with Mr. Parity, what we found out was that when we had requested that our folks parallel the testing with Lawson, what we found was very consistent results. And when there was a difference, our results were usually lower by a fraction. And so what we've developed is a plan that allows us to go back and test all of the buildings, all of the rooms in each of the buildings over time. And then we would bring Lawson back in to spot check to confirm that in fact the results we're getting are consistent with theirs. So rather than send the cost out and have them do the majority of the work, we'll do the majority of work, but then use an external person to validate the accuracy of ours. And we'll probably do that on a bit of an ongoing basis. So we want to make sure that people recognize that we're taking this seriously, that we're going to try and maximize those systems as best we can, and that we want to make sure that we're being accurate in our measures and what we're reporting. So we're going to go with an independent group doing some cross-checking for us.
Tim?
Unmuting. Thank you. Go ahead, Barbara.
Yes, I just had a question on that spreadsheet that was presented. There was a lot of red in the installed column, and some of those were installed within the last couple of years. I was just wondering if I should be alarmed.
Now, why we did that in red, Barbara, was just so you could see the year. That's all. Just so you know what you installed.
Every time I see red, I'm like, oh my God, there's trouble.
Probably should have chose a different color. I'm sorry.
Green next time, Gary. Next year, green.
Yeah, green.
Kim?
So go ahead, Brian.
Gary, I have a question here. I see that the filters were changed routinely 3 months. Now we've moved up to 1 month. What is the manufacturer's recommendation for change of filters?
So I'm not going off the manufacturer. I'm going off Lawson's group recommendation to keep the airflow rates as high as we possibly can, because we're taking in the outside the air solely, and because we're running them longer than we usually do. You know, they recommended that they be changed every month.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Seems excessive, you know.
Dr. Cochran.
That's something actually we've had some conversations about, Mr. Boyle, and I haven't had a chance to meet with Mr. Paradis and Mr. Dowd yet. And what we're going to recommend is that we monitor multiple locations and determine when the decrease in performance hits a point, so that we'll know when we should be replacing. Now, that may not be the same level at each building, but it'll allow us to be able to maximize the use while still maintaining the flow. In other words, there'll be a point where the filters get dirty enough that it'll impact the air exchange rate. And then we'll work with Lawson to determine what that would imply in terms of the replacement rate.
Okay.
So I have a question on this rebalancing. Why aren't we doing this on our own? Don't we have an HVAC technician?
We do, and I'm looking into what equipment would be used to rebalance it. If it's the same equipment as we have, or if there's different equipment to rebalance. But yes, I will work with him if it's the same equipment that we always use.
you'll work with,
With the in-house HVAC.
okay, so we don't know if that's something that we can do in-house.
I do not know that. I will look into that tomorrow.
Okay. Just quick suggestion on the filtration, the filter replacements. I would pick a room or two and just measure them on a daily basis. Just that may give you some idea of what's going on with filters.
I can pick a wing. I would
Pick a wing or something, you know, that I'm not saying don't do what they're suggesting, but it might give you a better idea. You might get a picture of
life of the filter. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The important thing here is that we're testing those filters under our current usage, which is much higher. We're taxing the systems much more than we have in the past in order to get that fresh air exchange throughout the buildings. So we'd be able to test it in the current environment.
Great, thank you. Other questions on the air handling? Let me scroll down. When my screen's being shared, I can't see everybody. Okay, thank you, Mr. Paradis and Jeff. Moving on, there's an executive summary. Is Susan Resco on? Could you just briefly, this is on pupil personnel services and special ed, and I'm going to turn the meeting over to the vice chair for a few minutes because I've got critters to take care of. I'll be back.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. In terms of an update that the board was looking for our emergency order number 48, in your board packets this evening, you have an update of the number of meetings that we've held and the number of meetings that are scheduled. For our early learning center and elementary schools, we have held 117 meetings and we still have 101 to go, giving us a total of 218 meetings scheduled out of the 258 that we have to hold, which gives us 40 left that we're working on to support our students in looking at their needs at this time. At the middle school, we've held 113 meetings. We've also scheduled 35 for a total of a possible 148 meetings. At our high school, we've held 91, we've scheduled 29. And we continue to work on that. I would like to take just one moment of your time to thank personally all of the teams that have worked so diligently. We do have some staff that we are still hiring. So I feel as though this is a significant gain for us in the special ed department because we've been able to work closely to get our most needy students back into the building. Additionally, in your packet is the higher needs, the SPED in-person instruction guidance document, and I have included the extended school year process that we go through regardless of COVID or a pandemic. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Does anyone have any? Sheila, go ahead.
Susan, do you think that these meetings are going to fall within the timelines, or are we looking at the next couple of weeks before these meetings are concluded?
We actually have until October 8th. That being said, Sheila, we do have some families that we are still trying to contact and have come in. So I think that within the order, the way it's followed, we may have some that go outside of the October 8th. But we have some families that we are still trying to connect with, and we've not been able to do that. But I think overall, they're going really well. I think we're still very humbled by the fact that we have a lot of work to do.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Just want to say thank you for all the effort.
Thank you for the support.
Brian, Dr. Cochran, do you have anything else you want to add to the reopening discussion, or should we move forward?
No, at this point in time, we've had some general conversations about process. We've talked with Attorney O'Shaughnessy about, what's been successful in other districts, and essentially the sort of incremental approach, moving forward, making sure that we'll have the staffing to fall back on. we know, for example, that we're coming up to flu season in a little while. And one of the issues that we have is that if you look, if we have everything covered, but barely, that's less capacity than in a normal school year, because we normally have 8, 10 subs. We could have a day, given the number of teachers at the high school, for example, it's not unusual to be five or to 10 teachers out in a given day during flu season. Now, the question is, if we don't have the capacity, the substitute capacity, if we don't have the teacher capacity, then what does that do? And so that's the sort of dual planning that we're going to have to do moving forward. Where are we with our pandemic floaters? Where are we with the ability to use para educators in a dual role? Where are we with long-term subs? HR has been working very hard at getting applicants in. I know I'm been approving batches of applicants to be moved forward every couple of days. And Nancy has been very, very busy on the accommodations piece and still trying to keep track of where we are with those positions. So despite all the work that's been done and the hours that have put in, you'll note that it was reported that we're short a significant number of paras at the elementary level still. And so that really has been the big issue. We've been advertising paras, I think, every day. We've had postings up since I've been here in late July. I think we've had postings up. Sandy and Lucy, can we, I mean, I'm not aware of any times that we haven't been trying to hire paras. Is that correct?
We've
So
always been long.
It's been an ongoing process. It's, yeah.
Always, every year.
In fact, one of the steps that HR took was to literally email everybody who had applied for a teaching position, a para position, a case manager position in the last 6 to 12 months to see if they're still interested in applying. So we haven't just posted and tried to determine whether or not somebody's coming. We've actually reached out to people who were potential candidates over the last significant period of time and asked them to apply. And we're getting more success in terms of gross numbers of applicants. So that's a good thing. And then now the question is, do those applicants fit the needs that we have and how well? And that's the single biggest determinant and detriment that we have at this point in time, that match.
Barbara?
So one of the feedbacks I've heard from social media is that people have applied for positions, but they don't hear back. Do you know how long it can take you to respond to an application? I know you have a lot.
Nancy, did you want to take that? Apparently not. I can tell you that I have seen at least 20 come across my desk over the last 3 days. Now, that's across a variety of positions, paras, daily substitutes, some teaching. We've also been successful in ramping up special education administrators. We have hired 3 in the last month, Sandy.
Yeah.
So did you want to give us a quick update on the increase in special ed capacity in that area?
Sure. I think Susan is on here still as well, if she'd like to chime in, but we had these administrative positions, they were open and we were looking to fill them over the summer. And so we were recently able to fill an elementary preschool coordinator position, and that person also works directly with special education at the elementary level, as well as a middle school special ed coordinator position and a high school special ed director who also works with the middle school coordinator as well, and with the entire special ed team. So they have started very recently in their positions and have already made an impact in our ability to move some work forward. So, you know, we're thrilled to welcome them and look forward to working with them in the future.
Also,
Cochran, can I just add to, I think we spoke at the last school board meeting, so it was just only 2 weeks ago, that we shortened our process for hiring paraeducators. And I think we're starting to see that get a little quicker because we sort of looked at redefining what steps we were taking through that process during this time. So hopefully that won't continue to be the case.
And just as an update to the board, the consult with Jane Bergeron on special education and related services started today. We had our first hour-and-a-half meeting. Good conversation, including the three new SPED administrators, along with Susan, Sandy, Lucy, myself. And right now we're looking at trying to decide what data we'll look at and looking at procedures moving forward and timelines. So the first step is taken. We expect to have another meeting again next week. We'd like to expedite this and get our recommendations out relatively shortly. In my experience, this is something that will probably take more than a month, but we may have some findings that we can act on and some suggestions we can act on sooner than that, because we know it's a priority, and we're going to be all hands on deck for this.
Barbara?
So I think it's fabulous how much progress we've made on special education and helping our students that are most in need. This is fabulous. But just back to my original question, how long for just a volunteer application or other applications beyond special education do we expect for them to hear back? Should they wait a week or 2 weeks before they ping you and ask how things are going?
Barbara, I may be able to go in the next 10 minutes and take a look at the timelines, because when I have the final approval, I may be able to go back and look at application date and give us some sense of that. So if I seem non-responsive for 5 or 10 minutes while I look that up, will you forgive me?
I'll think about it.
Barbara, do you mind if I just chime in here? So we've been concentrating on the proctors, and now we're picking up all on the substitutes, and the schools are hiring the paraeducators, but we delayed a little bit on the substitutes. So we're back looking at those as well. So normally we don't go longer than 3 weeks before we look at any of the substitute or the paraeducator applications. Does that help?
It does.
Thank you.
Anything else on this topic? Okay, thank you. Sorry, I missed part of it. Moving on, the next item on the agenda is the update on the audit. Mr. Dowd, it looks like we have a draft audit in the agenda packets.
We do have a draft audit. I received a copy of the draft just yesterday, and I reached out to Mr. Campo, and it sounded like he had a couple things going on the personal side on his end, and he was not able to undertake a final review of the audit paperwork. But the document is there. It's in your board packet, and if you have any questions on it in its preliminary form, I'm more than happy to answer them. It doesn't look like there's anything terribly dramatic in the report itself. I can certainly appreciate that he would like to take the time necessary to undertake his final review of the audit before inking it for final release. But I think what you see in front of you is pretty much what you're going to be seeing in the final report.
Okay, so we'll put this on for at the next board meeting for the board to take action.
Yep.
Thank you. The next item, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped. Budget development. So board members, you'll see that there was a budget uploaded this afternoon. So obviously we have not had time to review this in any detail. Mr. Dowd, hang on one second, because I'm opening the document.
I can share it out for you.
Yes, please. I think really what we need to be looking at right now is just this first page instead of going into any detail on the budget. So
yeah, there are a couple important notes.
Feel free to speak to this. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple important notes on the budget. So the FY 2021 budget was 73,304 voted without the capital reserve. Draft 1 that you're seeing in front of you tonight is 76,341,166. Difference of 3,036,522, or an increase of about 4.14%. So I think it's important to note that we really don't have a couple key features this early in the budgeting process. So I'll call this more of a preliminary budget than I will sort of a draft one, but for all intents and purposes for tracking, I'm going to call it a draft one. A couple of things that I do have in really driving the process this year are New Hampshire retirement rates. You can see the employee rates have gone from 11.17 to 14.06%, and teacher rates 17.8 to 21.06%. And those alone have contributed to about over $1 million increase in our budget alone, standing alone 1.2, I would guess 1.3 altogether. So that's something that won't change. That is an estimate that we did get in early. A couple other notes, we do have some open budgets for departments still. So as far as I can tell, I think all department budgets are in, but they may have some tweaks coming up. We talked about this at the last meeting. The board indicated it would be okay for the budget for the departments to continue making their budget adjustments up until October 14th or October 15th. So we hope to have that for the next budget meeting, at least the department budgets in final form. We'll have some position requests out there from the departments that I'd like to sit with the superintendent and make sure that we can articulate well and make sure that we don't have those positions somewhere available in other places in the district before presenting that to the board. So we'll have that on the plate as well. So assumptions and estimates. So this is what I was speaking to. Assumptions and estimates. I don't have our health insurance GMR, which is really a big number. And that percentage increase, that GMR is a guaranteed maximum rate. That comes out around mid-October, about 10 days, maybe less than 2 weeks. And that is a budget number. And last year, I believe the number was in the 5% range. It was a little over 5%, but it turned out that our actuals were, we actually had a decrease in our actual health insurance by about 1.4% or so. So the budget number, since that's not in, I've used a rate of 6.5% so that we can project the budget out from this preliminary stage where it may be. When I get our finals in from Health Trust, from our insurance carrier, I will include those in the budget. And if it's lower than 6.5%, we'll see a lower budget. If it's higher than 6.5%, we'll see a higher budget. But I think it's important to put a placeholder in there so that we can put the budget in perspective at this very early stage. Primex property and liability estimates are also not in. They are not scheduled to be received until later on in the budget process. They're not a huge component of the budget, but I've included a 7% increase in those rates as well. We're locked in, I believe, so that we would not be seeing anything more than a 7% increase in those rates as well. So the biggest thing here, and it really is going to leave a little bit for the board to consider, is the incorporation of SAU costs into the Timberlane budget. So SAU 55 will be moving on, and Timberlane will be incorporating those costs into the district budget. Timberlane will be, as of July 1 next year, be known as a single district SAU. So there's no separate SAU budget. All SAU costs, all costs that are captured in the SAU now will simply roll into the Timberlane budget. And there are a couple new lines that have been added to accommodate those costs. So a couple factors for the board to consider. I know that you voted on, I believe, 10 positions at our last meeting. I think 4 of those we already had. So I think we had 6, which have been added, and 5 additional support positions have been added as well. Admin assistant type roles have been added as well. I don't know if that's what the board is envisioning as the final structure, position structure for the district moving forward. And I will leave it to the board. I'll have to rely on your guidance for that as well. SAU costs are going to be found in the 2321 line, the 2511 line, the 2831 line, along with costs that are in our benefits line and business services. I'm going to take a moment just to jump down so that everyone understands, as you look at this over the next couple weeks, what those lines look like and where they are now in the budget. So right now, you'll see some of your school board expenses start here in the 2300 series of accounts, and other school board services are right there at 2319. So beginning at this account, 2320, you'll see last year's SAU assessment of $1,748,315. Below that, you'll see that I've added a series of accounts to account for, capture some of those administrative related expenses. And the reason that those expenses are captured there, when you think about the budget room, we have an 1100 function, which is regular education, a 1200 function, which is special education. We have let's say a principal's line at 2410. We may have student services at another line, facilities in the 2620 lines. So we really don't have any place to put these administrative costs. They're not principal's office. They're not anything other than support services. So those are the series of accounts that I've added to capture those costs for budgetary purposes. So again, that's in the 23-21 series of accounts. I've also added some accounts in the 25-11 range for fiscal services, which would be the business office. And we have some costs as well for HR, a little bit lower than that. So I'll be asking the board to consider what you'd like that to look like. This is going to be the HR line as well. So I've noted in that summary above where these costs can be found if you wanted to take a look at these later on. We also have some costs for insurance and the like captured in our benefits line. So I will say this as well, and this is probably a little bit to think about. I have our default budget in a good place to go. The only thing is that I really need these costs, the SAU type costs, really finalized by the board for incorporation into the budget. You can see how many lines they touch, and it really is, it's better to have that known. I reached out, and Dr. Farah and I had communicated on this earlier. The default budget's really tricky because typically our budget from the prior year that was voted would roll forward, with the exception that if we have any reductions in positions, those are removed. If we have any contractual obligations, which are no longer contractual obligations, those are removed. If we have staff that the board's added, well, under our default statute, those positions don't really get added to the default budget. They stay out of the default budget. So there's no real clear guidance on how you get SAU costs into the default budget. The reason being is that the legal obligation, the contractual obligation that Timberland had to pay its SAU assessment last year is gone. You no longer have a requirement, a contractual obligation, if you will, with the SAU to pay those costs to the SAU. In speaking with the consultant that we have for transition planning, I'm leaning more toward the idea that this is something that is a legal requirement. We're legally required to have SAU services. And as a result of that, for default budget purposes, the best measure of what that line is going to be for our default budget is going to be what we put into the operating budget. And really, it's going to be in the board's discretion as to how to recognize those costs for the default budget purposes. I can only let the board, and I can let you know what the options are. And unfortunately, this is a situation that there is no clear answer. But I think that if we get the costs in the operating budget for the SAU, a good argument can be made, legally required, therefore they would fall under the default statute. Whatever we have in here for SAU services for superintendent, business office, HR would then go into the default budget. So I'll leave that to the board to decide. I really take no position on positions. I take no position on what those positions, what the compensation would be that are associated with them. So I'll ask you to take a look at those. And I sent Dr. Farah a little bit more of a detailed breakdown of what those SAU costs are, how they map over, how they compare. And I'm happy to discuss that with any members of the board. But I'm sure there are a number of questions. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to address them. Barbara?
Hi, Mr. Dowd. Thank you for this presentation and the summary of the major changes. I appreciate that. Are we able to get the spreadsheet as a spreadsheet instead of a PDF, please?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Just remember, Barbara, I'm going to say the word WYSIWYG. If you remember what that means from the old days,
I do.
WYSIWYG.
I was there back when the Lisa and the star. Yeah, I'm ancient.
What you see is what you get. So it prints out, it outputs just as it is, but you can sort, manipulate the numbers however you want. So.
Well, as long as it's an XLSX file, right?
Yeah, there are no calculations in it though.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah.
I'll put some in.
Yeah, put them in and you can sort it and do whatever you need with it. So just FYI.
Thank you.
Sheila?
First of all, I was chuckling, Jeff, because I think in one breath you might have said positions. I'm not in a position to make on positions and then positions. And I think you said it about 25 times. I was sitting here cracking up saying, how is he doing that? Isn't there, I mean, we're not the first district to withdraw. There needs to be precedence on this somewhere.
Well, what I did ask Mr. Dowd to do was the correspondence that we had, we discussed, he brought this to my attention. I think what I would do is request that you speak to Mr. Martin, who's the consultant that we've hired, financial consultant, to see if he has experience and feels comfortable weighing in on this. And if not, then we need to go to Jim O'Shaughnessy for a weighing in here on the overall. But I think we'll start with Mr. Martin, because I think he probably has seen this before, maybe not, but there have been other people that have transitioned, so it should be something that somebody's seen.
Yeah, that's what we're not the first ones to do this, so there's got to be some kind of a precedent somewhere on how to handle this.
Well, there may be, and I think that, and I spoke with Mr. Martin, and his take was the same as me. We went through all maybe the 4 categories that you would typically look at, and really, I think that he's on and I'm on legally required services. These are legally required services by statute, so they would be included in the default budget as legally required. Bear in mind, Sheila, and it's a great point. There have been other districts, but the only problem is our default statute language has changed since then, since some of those withdrawals have happened. So the treatment might be a little bit different. I'm fine to put it out to Attorney O'Shaughnessy as well.
No, I was just curious if there was, instead of us racking our brain, if somebody else has already been through this painful process, and we could just kind of, go with what they did.
Yeah.
Well,
it's in the board's discretion.
It is the board's discretion and is mandated by statute that we provide, that superintendent services are provided. So it'd be awfully difficult to argue that they are not.
I agree.
Default expense. So I don't really, if the board wants to have Jim O'Shaughnessy weigh in on this, fine, but I don't really think it's to me, it does, I just don't see a reason why you wouldn't put those numbers in. But we have to be cognizant of the fact that we're still staffing up. And I think we do need to be very aware of what we are putting into this year's coming budget that will also drop into the default budget, so that we're not in a situation where we find out that we need 2 more staff next year and we can't put those people into the default because we didn't plan accordingly.
Right.
So I think it's critical that we take a good close, we've looked at the staffing from the new SAU, the withdrawal plan looks at it, but I think the board needs to have another conversation on this. Where are we now? We're at the beginning of October. I think in 2 weeks, I think this should be brought back to the board. I think we need to have a discussion on SAU staffing and costs, so that we can get that dropped into both budgets. So Dr. Cochran, we need to have another board discussion on SAU staffing. And essentially too, Jeff, because we're going to need to pop some numbers in for superintendent salary, assistant superintendent, and those numbers, those all have got to be popped in with benefits. And I think the easiest thing would be to draw them from the current SAU budget.
So I've incorporated them into the existing budget, into the proposed budget, really just as placeholders, and really to put them there and allow the board to have a discussion on it. What positions and what's the compensation? So they're there. And Kim, I sent you a little bit of a summary as well on those accounts, on sort of that transition. And if you're comfortable with that, I can send that out to the board, and you can take a look and see if that's helpful in articulating where it may be that you end up with the figures.
On what the positions are?
On the whole thing, on what the positions are, what the compensation will be for each position, and actually where each cost that we're putting into the budget, where it ties into our operating budget. Just those.
I actually had a first conversation on that earlier this week, and we still have some things to continue to discuss. And obviously, I have some additional things to discuss with the board, especially in light of potential implications of SB2 and a default budget.
Yes.
I have a question in regard to Brian. I know Jeff does a lot of the work on this, but did you get a chance to overlook it and were involved in it? Or is this going to basically going to be one of your first times of seeing it where you would offer a lot of comments?
You're talking to me?
Yes.
That was part of the staffing plan was part of the original work that was done in my consulting capacity. We've looked at comparisons. We did some comparisons, for example, to Salem, and had some, I think I presented to the board about 6 weeks ago, maybe, the draft, and we said that we would look at it as we get closer to the actual time. So I think when we look at now, between now and the next board meeting, I think we should be able to get some clarity on this in terms of where we need to be on the staffing level, and then overlay what are the SB2 and budget implications. If we go in light with SB2 in positions, then what are the possible downsides? I think the board's original request was to come in a little lean and then staff up, and if we needed more staff, and I think when you're starting a new SCU, that's the appropriate way to go. But again, we do have to take a look at the SB2 default budget issues.
Yep, I agree. So let's talk about this again in 2 weeks. I think we'll have a much better idea on staffing.
Just a quick note before closing out here. I know CIP committee will be meeting. I've funded our facilities lines at their current levels, and I'll just scoot down to where those are at the end of the report. And I suspect that as we get through our process for CIP, a lot of these bigger items will have some identification as to whether those numbers are accurate or not. So.
So we have just a little over $1 million roughly in capital in this current budget, the proposed budget as you have right now.
Yep. Same as current.
And then looking at, the major driver here is the benefits, which is up over $2 million. And it looks like with where you're estimating group insurance, a 1% increase in insurance equates to about $100,000 in the budget. Is that? I think that's what that looks like.
Yep.
Okay.
Kim, there's also a driver in special education again on outsourcing. Sorry, private outsourcing.
What line are you in?
I have to.
That's 1,200.
Oh, Jeff's moving it for me.
1,200 line. Sorry, I don't want to get everyone dizzy.
All right.
There you are. The series.
Well, there's a $600,000 increase in special ed.
Right. But
and there's about, most of that is in private tuition.
Exactly.
And residential, no, private tuition.
No, private tuition. It's gone up over almost 600,000 right there. So I'm hoping that Jane can take a look at this, because that's a big, it's just a big number.
Sheila, I think that's a great call. I think the important thing to remember, though, is that the farther along we get in the budget process, the more certain we are on those costs.
No, I understand, but it just seems like, it's since I,
it's a fair look at you're looking at this number right here, which is the year we just closed, right? 2.9, year before 2.3.
Go right before that one.
That's not all. There are some other costs that are associated with it, like that 1.8. Well, you really would have to include the 1.8 that in the 225. So that's about 2 million, 2.3. Right. Yeah, it's a bit of a trend. But
18, 19, 20. All I'm saying is, I think that should be looked at by Jane. That's all.
Yeah. And even that amount right there might be up. This number, that 3.4, but ultimately the 242 for residential is gone. So really, it's those two numbers consolidated. But there, there is a trend there. So, and as we move further along, hopefully we'll be able to tighten that number up.
Okay. Anything else on the budget? No. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dowd. Moving on, the next item on the agenda is the strategic plan. I wanted to just bring this back around because it is a 5-year strategic plan, and what's happened here is that most of the leaders of the various subcommittees have left or retired, and we should be relooking at trying to get those subcommittees up and running, as we're now moving into the 3rd year of the plan, which means that sorry, I'm just scrolling down to the years here, that fairly soon we're going to be, looking to start redoing the plan. So I don't know if the board would like to direct the superintendent to take a look at the current plan and what we have projected for 2021. And actually, what I think would make sense is to, not next meeting, maybe the meeting after, is to look at where we had action items and to update, 18, 19, did those get done? Did 19, 20 get done? And I'm not looking for huge amounts of supporting documentation here, though I appreciate the large amounts of documentation that the staff gives me. I know you're busy. Sandy, there's smiling. So I know I get a chuckle from somebody. So, I'm trying to get a sense here, okay, of what we've done and where we need to go and what we're looking like, because we spent a lot of time building the plan. Now, and now I'm going to move down a little bit to the last part of the meeting, which is on the superintendent's goals, because I think strategic planning and superintendent's goals marry with each other. So in the past, the superintendent's goals have been driven by the goals from each school board. Hampstead has their goals, we have our goals, and the superintendent's goals are based on that. I'm not against that. We are now in September and we have an interim superintendent, and I feel that we should look at or Dr. Cochran, I think the board would like to task you looking at what our board goals are for this year. Obviously, we're in the midst of a pandemic, and either articulating whether or not you think those are something you can help us attain, or if you have other goals that you feel would be more fitting. Is that a reasonable request?
Sure. First one I want to recommend, given the situation, is that we add an 8th day to the week.
Okay, sure. Sounds good.
A second that.
8 days a week. Wasn't that a song?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, I think that's reasonable to perhaps take a look back, see where we are with the strategic plan, what things do we want to pull up, and how does my role play into those. I think it's appropriate that there be a good match between goals for the superintendent and the broader board goals. The question is I would be looking for some direction from the board in terms of prioritizing those things. So if we can get some clarity around the board goals and how that relates to the strategic plan, and then have derived mine from that list, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. And to be honest, I thought I was going to get the board goals in this packet, and I have not looked at them. So maybe you and I can have a little get together.
Maybe Kim, we're following the traditional approaches that we've done since the dawn of time here. Maybe in the light of what we're experiencing with this whole COVID thing, maybe we should just rethink this on out. Because let's be honest, at least if we can get back to school the 5 days, I mean, barring everything with the environment and stuff, I mean, if that happens and everybody's going to be really happy, Dr. Cochran's will be evaluated on how he's delivered through this whole process. He's going to know what the feedback of this board, and we've been supporting him all along the way here. I think we're just making work when we don't really need to be dealing with that, with taking the bandwidth and putting it towards other things that are more beneficial to the community.
Okay, Jen?
I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of two things that I think also very important. I mean, obviously everything's very important. Let's be honest. But budget considerations. We just saw this first pass through. It was like $3 million increase over last year. we all, I mean, I think I can speak for most of us, like, that's just not gonna fly. And that has a lot of work to be done to it. It always comes in like a first draft like that. I think we do a lot of hard work, but I don't want to lose sight of that. And also, facilities is a huge priority, and I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of that.
So, and Sean, I don't disagree with you in some sense that we need to prioritize, you know, the fact that we only have 7 days and we can't give him 8 days. So I don't want this to be a long drawn out, you know, process on this, but I do think that as a board with a new interim superintendent, that at our next meeting, he should have given our goals for this year a look through, and that this board needs to relook the goals and say, what do we need to prioritize given the fact that we're in a year where there's so much going on? And clearly, Jen, you just stated it. One of them is budget. Communities are going to be stressed for budget, you know, if people are stressed financially. And the other thing is facilities to support the people that are working in these buildings as best we can. So I think that's
And a new SAU.
What?
And a new SAU.
Well, and that's right. I mean, those are three big goals right there. That's
right
it.
there.
Right
and,
there.
And getting kids back in person, as
Right.
Sean said.
There you go. So
Hey, I'll make that a motion to put those 3 items in our plan and give it to Brian and call it a day.
That was 4.
Well,
it was 4, Sean, but yeah.
Here's the 4 that I have. The educational model of COVID, handling that. So that's a goal. Budget and look at the $3 million increase, facilities and special education.
New SAU.
I'm sorry?
Facilitating a new SAU.
But the new SAU is actually for this year, not for next year. Right?
Well, it's the transit. This is the transition year.
Right.
So we're building the new
this-
SAU. Yeah.
That's this year.
So is that part of the budget or?
No. It's part of the board. It was part of the board goals, which
Goals.
obviously will.
Okay.
Those are the
inform
4 biggest
superintendent.
goals we have, right? Well, 5 now.
Yeah. 4 to
Special
5.
education.
Okay.
There's
Okay. So
5.
we need to stop so we don't want to keep adding. Okay.
No, but that's all. He had a special.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So, so I think we're good on that. And Jeff, one other thing now that it popped back into my head, because you sent me an email about the health trust. I think that the board should be apprised of what we're looking at there and have some time to consider how we want to do this. And it should be put on the agenda for next time for an action. So can you inform the board about this?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Kim, for reminding me. So Health Trust is an organization that we use and a lot of state and governmental agencies use for healthcare. They don't necessarily turn a profit. Any excess funding that they receive from one year over the next, I won't call it a profit, but any excess funding that they receive goes into their contingency fund. And when their contingency fund reaches their actuarially established limits for prudent and sufficient backup and sufficient balances, they then make a return of that capital, that return of that surplus, called surplus, to their members. And so our district is in line to receive a return of surplus to the tune of, I think it'll net the district between 425,000 and 440,000 or so. So I spoke with Dr. Farah about 3 options, although we'll be getting into rate setting very soon, but the 3 options would be to use it to reduce taxes for the current year as local revenue and recognize in the current year as local revenue. We could use it or just leave it in the budget, not spend it, and allow it to go as excess surplus into the next year, but we wouldn't be able to spend it. Or we can have a public hearing on it and just treat it as unanticipated revenue and not use it to reduce taxes, but be able to incorporate it as part of our budget in the event that we need that for anything COVID related or for any other expenses that should come up. So those are the 3 options. Each has its merits. I would really like the board to have some directions because we'll be going to rate setting very soon. I know there are needs on the town's end. I think the least desirable option is to just let it not become part of our budget and let it go into next year's surplus. If we're going to return it to the towns, it's probably this year that they can use the relief, or if we want to make use of it and be able to use it to spend to satisfy some of our ongoing expenses, this would be the year to do that as well. So thank you, Dr. Farah, for bringing that up. I'll give the board a heads up on it. I can put together a quick summary as well, or executive summary for your next meeting to maybe make a determination as to how you'd like to treat that. I've
When
spoken
do you
with.
need an answer, Jeff?
Next meeting would be helpful. If rate setting is, if I'm able to do rates before that, then I would like to have that answer, you know, as quickly as we can have it. I prefer almost, and Dr. Farah and I talked about this, I prefer to actually have a check in hand or have the funding in hand before making a determination of it, and certainly before including it as part of this year's revenue, if that's what we're going to be doing, either to offset taxes this year or to use it to spend for expenses that are coming up in the current year. So if I have to set rates earlier than our next meeting, I'll let Dr. Farah know. But I wouldn't include that as part of the current year revenue without having it in hand first. I know that they're projecting it, but yeah, no, I need to see that money.
When do you expect to see that?
I'm not certain. I know that they were going to be voting on it, I believe, this month. So I can check with them and see if they have an anticipated date for distribution.
I have another question.
Go ahead, Jill.
Okay, so my gut, you know me, I always like to send back money to the towns. That's my gut, always. However, I'm going to do a complete 180 this time around and say I think we should go with a public hearing and take it as unexpected revenue, because we are hiring a lot of staff right now. We may need additional things like air handlers or whatever. I don't know what we can use it for, or PPE, or, I mean, it just seems to me like we're spending a ton of money that we didn't anticipate a year ago when we built this budget. You know, just in cleaning supplies alone, as I see the vouchers come in, we're spending a lot of unanticipated money that was never put in the budget to begin with. So that's my gut. I don't know how we have to, I know we have to post a public hearing beforehand. So I don't know how long that takes, but that's my personal gut.
So to Sheila's point, Mr. Dowd, can you, when you present us this in 2 weeks, can you give us some idea of what our spend is on, quote, like COVID related? You know, we know how many people now we've staffed up with. We know if you could have that, that would better inform our decision. Jen?
I know there was the big headline about schools that were expecting money that then did not get money. Did that apply? Did that happen to us?
Was that the CARES money? Somebody asked that during the.
No, that wasn't CARES. That was funding from Homeland Security, I believe, for PPE, where they had counted on the PPE. And frankly, the guidance had not been nearly sufficient to rely on that as a source of funding. So Jen, I wasn't relying on that until I heard for certain whether that was something that was going to go through or not. That's the model that we're in, is a lot of vague guidance, and until it's certain. And as a result of that, there are a lot of pieces that shift around. So, you know, I'm constantly monitoring to make sure that we're not losing out on opportunities because we've asked for money in one place and we could have, now we don't qualify for asking for it from another source. But no, that was Homeland Security, and that was a big surprise. But again, I wouldn't count on that until I had a firm commitment. We didn't have a firm commitment.
Okay, thank you.
Barbara?
Can you characterize how much we've applied for in CARES reimbursements and how much we've received?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because we had, I believe, 60,000 in for a lot of our technology related Zoom and a couple of Zoom related platform programs. And our allocation is about 124,000, which seems like a lot, but unfortunately it pales in comparison to some other districts. And so we really aren't on a huge receiving end for that. So what I was just talking about, so we've realized that Homeland Security will not be able to cover PPE. We've realized that the governor has made opportunities for PPE available. And we had that money, the remainder of the money lined up for some special education services, which we found out this afternoon we could get covered through a different grant. So again, I want to make sure that I'm not missing out on this grant because we've already requested money for that service here. So we've been taking a very cautious approach about what it is that we've been asking for. It's 124,000. The money is there. It's guaranteed. It's just a matter of making sure that I can fit that money into to meet our needs and not shut us out of any other grant opportunities that we have for special education. So it's pulled back at the moment until we can hit pause. These were just two developments that came up in the past couple of days. So I really don't want to lose out on any opportunities because we've applied for it, somewhere else, and now we don't qualify for it through another grant or something. So.
But we are getting something. Yes.
124. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion on this? All right. Moving on. I think board members, in your agenda packet, there's also, you'll see the annual meeting and election calendar. This is just basically informational, looking at the deadlines here. So the public hearing on the proposed budget is January 14th. And if we're still in COVID land, I don't know how we're gonna, it's probably gonna have to be on Zoom or something, I don't know. So, all right, moving on. Policies. Jen, can I turn it over to you? You're muted. You're muted.
You can turn it over to me. Policy committee was supposed to meet tonight. We did not meet tonight because we had the non-meeting, so our meeting is rescheduled for 2 weeks. So I don't really have an update on policy.
Okay. We have a second read on 3 policies.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
So there's a second read on EBGC, communicable and infectious disease, EHAC, electronic digital records and signatures, JLCG, exclusion of students who present a hazard. These are all recommended by New
Yes,
Hampshire.
I think those are all kind of new policies. So, I mean, nothing went back to policy committee, I don't believe. There was a lot of information for people to read. I don't know if everybody read it and is ready to vote on those.
Sheila?
I read it. I'll make the motion to accept.
Those,
I've got to
as a
go back
second
on my
read,
screen.
as a second read to accept policies EBCG, EHAC, JLCG.
Yes.
Thank you, ladies.
Well, I tried to go back and forth. I was actually in there. So moved.
Okay,
Barbara,
is there a second?
Second. Unless Jen
Okay.
wants to do it.
No, you're good. Thank you.
Kat, go ahead and take the roll. I'm just gonna walk out for a second, Mike.
Are you in favor, Kim?
Yes.
Mr. Boyle,
Yes.
Mr. Doobie,
Lee, you there?
Yeah.
You unmuted?
Issue at one point.
we'll come back to him. Dr. Farah already said yes. Mrs. Kishka,
Yes.
Ms. Lowe's,
Yes.
Mrs. Mockmer,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Savage,
Yes.
Mrs. Silva,
Yes.
and Mr. Doobie.
I don't even see him.
Nope.
We lost him. Okay.
I think we lost him.
He's not in the huge Hollywood Square.
All right. The other thing is, and Jen, it's on the agenda here, is the discussion on JIA. At some point, we need to get that policy back up before us. And I think you and Dr. Cochran have been going back and
It was
forth.
it was on the list for tonight, policy committee that got pushed back. So.
Okay, thanks. So I
It
guess
is a
we'll push.
priority.
We'll do it next time. All right. That's it. So moving on to administrator's report.
I do have a report out on the length of time it took for the hires, and I just randomly picked 5 that I approved today. 2 were June applicants who it looks like we reached out to and brought in for interviews. One was 25 days from application to approval, and 2 were 11 days from the form filled out to approval.
Great.
Part of that, I think, is as a result of the approval to expedite the approval process.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Anything else? Sheila?
Kim, just wanted to let you know that Lee lost his internet connection.
Okay, thanks. Jen?
Oh, I'm sorry, are we on, I don't have the agenda in front of me. Are we on?
Dr. Cochran, are you done with the administrator's report, or did you want to move on to personnel?
Oh, I'll wait till the end then. Go ahead. Sorry.
I think there's been enough about administration for this evening. Much of the topics have been related to the things that have kept me pinned to a desk what feels like 18 hours a day, but it's not been that long. So we're working through, from where I came in at late July to where we are. I have to say, I have to credit the work of the Sandy Allairs, the Ken Hendersons, the Lucys, for all the work that they've done. We have a lot of I've said before, we have a lot of really great people, and we really do. So it has been a wonderful ramp up. I still have a long ways to go. Remind me next time I take on a superintendent position not to do it in the middle of an epidemic. But learning every day, ramping up more, looking at, speaking of strategic plans, looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats is a constant thing. I'm hoping to get back out to elementary schools soon. I'm into the middle and high schools more because it's a little more convenient. But elementary principals, if you're in the audience, please know that you're probably going to see me again soon. I think we're prioritizing the right things. I think we're working on the wishes of the board and the needs that are being identified in the district as it is. And we're also trying to look at longer range things. So we have a good mix of in the moment things that we're responding to, things that are the next, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 months out. And then, things like the special education audit, which are more long-term things. So it's been a nice balance. I do know that we need to get some work done on SIP. I'm looking forward on that, and I'm pleased that the board is open to taking the existing situation into consideration and related to how we're going to respond with the SIP plan. I'm very much looking forward to the staffing up situation for the new SAU. The BA position is posted, and we have received a couple of applications for that, and that is going out this early because it is going to take at least 6 months to get the systems up and running. The systems between the SAU and the 2 districts are actually segregated within the existing software, but it's still a significant period of work required. And so we have an anticipated start date on that hire for January 4th. We'll be moving forward with the other positions, probably posting after Christmas or just before Christmas. But
Okay.
that's what,
Thank you. We do have one professional nomination here in the packet for a Timberlane Regional High School special education teacher.
and it looks like I didn't get the very last edition and print it off. So Dr. Farah, if you wouldn't mind.
So there's a professional nomination for Audra Lowe for Timberlane Regional High School special education teacher. Is there a motion to accept the nomination?
I'll make that motion.
Sean makes the motion. Second? Kristen seconds. Any discussion? Kat, can you take a roll call vote? Is Kat still there?
Kat is still here.
Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
Mr. Boyle,
Yes.
Mr. Doobie, Dr. Farah,
Yes.
Mrs. Kishka,
Yes.
Ms. Lowe's,
Yes.
Mrs. Mockmore,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Savage,
Yes.
Mrs. Silva.
I'm going to abstain. Well, just take the vote. I'll speak to it after.
Okay. That motion carries. All
May
right,
I make
moving
a
on.
comment?
Yes, go ahead.
Just, I looked at the agenda packet earlier this week. I looked at the agenda packet yesterday. I looked at the agenda packet at 3:30 today. And then at 6 o'clock when I logged in, there's all this information in the agenda packet, including this nomination, which honestly, I didn't really have a chance to even look at. So it would be helpful if we could have things in there,
I agree with that. And I like to actually make it now a formal motion, is that 24 hours before our school board is the last update of any documentations that this board shall receive.
Second.
I'm sorry, I disagree with that, because if we have a nomination
has
for a
been made and
professional
seconded?
position and it's just coming in, Sean, we don't want to wait 2 weeks right now. And
Well,
also,
I would entertain that as an exception to the rule, but let's be honest, we get this every school board meeting. It's not a one in a, it's all the time, Kim, and we know it. It's not right. We're looking at MOUs that came on out today, and we're going to be talking about it in a couple of minutes. I mean, these are the kind of things that we need time to parse. And I don't like being rushed and trying to do this stuff while I'm watching a meeting or while somebody from the public is talking to us and we're all as a board not listening to them. We're actually reading the documentation that we're going to be talking about as soon as they get done speaking. That's why.
okay, so I agree with you. We should be getting in as far in advance as possible, but I can tell you right now, we didn't discuss the budget. That was in the agenda packet late. We didn't discuss the audit report. So I'm trying to make an effort that if something is not to the board in a timely manner, that we don't discuss it, we push it out. I think personnel, sometimes you got to take a look at this TSSU MOU. If the board is not ready to have a vote on that tonight, then we can hold it. But we either hold it for 2 weeks or we have authorized me to sign whatever we see right now, or we have a special meeting. So I'm happy to do that. I don't want to make a categorical motion. I think in general that the staff has been doing the best they can on terms of trying to get us information, but I'm happy if Sean, if you want to make that motion.
Explain why I abstain. That's all.
Sean, if you want to make that motion, that's fine.
I would actually like to call the question because I'd like it to be known, and I'll even be acceptable of the chair to make adjustments to this as we go forward. It's just that we got to have something on the record because this has been going back since the day I've joined the board. I was like really surprised on how late we get information on here. And it's things that didn't need to be late. It's just, it's the philosophy of everything being late is acceptable, and that's not. And I want it to be known and captured on the record that we don't accept this anymore.
Okay, so can you tell me what your motion is?
That the board shall receive all its documents 24 hours prior to the school board meeting.
Okay, so is there a second on that?
I'm going to second for discussion because I'd like to hear what Dr. Cochran has to say.
Okay, and Sarah also, I say you had your hand up, so let Dr. Cochran go and then Sarah.
I agree with Mr. O'Neill in terms of his point is well taken. It is not efficient to receiving documentation at this late. Board members, this board is probably one of the hardest working boards I've ever seen. I know we do have a lot going on, but I think we have to do a better job of respecting your time. It is my sincere hope. First, I apologize for it. Secondly, it's my sincere hope that this is something that's caused by virtue of the volume of work they're engaged in right now. And it is one of my goals to improve that moving forward. When you have a board that works as hard as this group does, you want to give them the opportunity to get the materials in time. and feel confident and comfortable coming into this meeting and not having things thrown at you at the last minute. That has happened by virtue primarily of the volume of work. I apologize for the lateness, and we will absolutely do our best to improve moving forward.
Okay, Sarah?
I was just going to basically say that I disagree with Mr. O'Neill's categorization that this is an acceptable behavior. I believe, I agree with Dr. Cochran. I feel like it's just the amount of work that our employees have been doing and just trying to make sure that the information that we have in our agenda packets is accurate when we receive it. And yes, I mean, I agree. Sometimes it's frustrating when you log in and, you know, it's a half an hour or an hour before the meeting and you're seeing something new. But I don't believe at all that it's a fair characterization to say that our employees find this acceptable. I believe that they are trying as hard as they can to get us accurate information in our agenda packets as soon as they can. I will not be voting in favor in this motion because I feel that it'll be it's too restrictive, and we may end up receiving information that is that's not accurate and having to double back and get corrected information either in the meeting or, you know, after the meeting at a later date.
Okay, Sheila?
Here's the issue I have. I've been on this board for, God, it's 2 years, I think tonight. Kristen, happy anniversary. Because we came in the same day. This has been going on from the first day we walked in. We've gotten information late. That is no reflection on you, Dr. Cochran, at all, because nobody can point it at you. It's been going on for years. I understand Sean's frustration. I think my biggest frustration is when I'm in a meeting and things are uploaded, when we're actually here and things are uploaded and they just appear. That's probably one of the most frustrating things to me. As I've said before, we all have families, we all have lives, we all have jobs. And for all intents and purposes, we all have other committees and we all have to eat and we all have to get ready for a meeting. I was a little taken back at the last meeting when my counterpart was basically yelled at for not paying attention to a parent when he was just got out of work and just got to the meeting and trying to get through the agenda packet. So, you know, I do take exception to that. Sean, I'm going to ask that we withdraw our motion. And I would like to give Dr. Cochran some time and give Dr. Cochran and everybody else the benefit of the doubt right now to get us this information in the future.
I totally agree with you, Sheila, in regards to this is definitely not Dr. Cochran's bailiwick that we're in. It just that, and I will accept it. I will withdraw my motion. I think we've all aired our grievances right now, and this could go back to the base and be discussed. But I think at least my point, I know has been made clear of where I stand on this.
Okay.
I will withdraw my motion.
And I'll withdraw my second, Kim.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to committee reports and reports of the school board. Barbara, I think you've got Energy Committee to report.
Yes, so we thought about doing a warrant article to put in solar on Sandown North, but after considering it, we've decided to push that off for another year. But meanwhile, we are going to continue on with the LED lights. We saw a 2-year return on investment for the cafeteria and hallway, the lights that have already been done and the outdoor lights. So we're going to continue on with the classrooms. And the other one was the HVAC. We talked about that a bit, and reducing the number of hours we're going to be running that to get our operating costs down a little bit. That's it.
So one of the things that we should be looking at on the CIP is investment, and we talked about $100,000 for approximately to replace light bulbs. So for those that don't know, a 2-year return on investment means what we're paying for the light bulbs and the reduction in energy costs, plus what we get for a rebate. In 2 years, those pay for themselves, and then we still continue energy savings. So those are moves that we need to make. So Barbara, thanks for heading up that committee. Brian Boyle, budget.
They had a budget, we had a budget committee meeting, and let's see, I think we went over just the Pollard budget. That was down a couple of bucks. So I'm trying to think what other budget we went over. You still on, Jeff? I'm trying to think what budget we went on.
Transportation.
Transportation, yes, transportation's up, but that's all by contract. Thought there was more than that.
We'll review the budget committee's budget, Brian, which was one line.
All right, that's enough on the budget committee. And we have a CIP meeting scheduled for next week. We are going to be needing to look, we do need more members on that. There's some towns that aren't open. So
Fisker, we need a Kristen or Sarah, we need a Plastow rep. That's what we need.
We need a Plastow rep on the CIP committee, and we're meeting
Wednesday.
Thank you.
What time?
7.
I'll look at
I've
my
got a
schedule.
full-time job. This is tough. I want to be on it, but I don't know if I can commit.
I'll look at my calendar and let you know.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right. I think that's it. Kristen, you don't have an update on the superintendent search, or?
No, I don't have an update at this time. I did want to ask so quick on the committees. Jeff, are we going to schedule something on safety? We talked about that a couple meetings ago.
Yes, let me get on that for looking at some of the next couple of weeks and reconstituting, making sure that we have everyone that we need to have as part of that committee, since we've had some turnover here. So,
okay. I'll watch for something for you then.
Thank you.
As far as the superintendent, no, Sandy and I, we need to touch base and talk and go from there, but I don't have anything to report right now.
Okay, great.
Been a little busy.
Anything else?
Sandy and I need to, we have our meeting on Tuesday for curriculum and assessment.
Yep.
I'll have an update at the next meeting.
Okay, great. Anything else? All right, well, I guess we will adjourn then. I will, Jen? Oh, wait, are we adjourning, or are you just waving by?
No. Don't we have two things?
Oh, yes, actually, you're right. I wrote it and I circled it. We need to.
And I just had one thing too. I had one thing, you had one thing. I don't know, can we, I don't know if this is possible, but I'm going to ask anyway, Dr. Cochran. Is it possible when we meet just to get a quick update out to the community as far as where we stand in our district with COVID numbers? I know there's some information on the state dashboard for the schools, but I'm not sure that it's really accurate given what they're reporting out. And I think it's information maybe the community might want to be abreast of.
I think that's very doable. One of the things I should have updated on the board is that since the last meeting, met with senior administration, and we have decided, or I've decided, to tap Mr. Peterson as being the person, as the main coordinating body for all things COVID. His nickname has become Captain COVID, but his data skills, his EMT background, his coolness under fire, and his ability to coordinate and collaborate has really allowed us to improve how we're responding in a more consistent way. The different variations of federal versus state versus other forms of guidance had to be navigated. And he's done a masterful job of that. And we've moved from being in a responsive mode to now looking at what are we going to start pushing out proactively to people to make them aware of the situation. So we've had to handle a couple of cases. We've learned from those cases. I think we're in a much better place. I told him that I would take some responsibilities off his desk for picking this up, and I'll let him know in May what those responsibilities are. No, he's has a tremendous work rate, and his skill set matches this. He's worked very diligently with the nurses at the high school and administrators on the cases that we've had, and I think we're in a much better place. And kudos to our nurses, including Nurse Bobby and Mark, as being the biggest people that we've leaned on during this time. And I believe our communications will improve. And hopefully our numbers will stay where they are.
So have we had more than one case confirmed?
We have had 2 potential situations that we've had to respond to. One was confirmed and one was determined to be not confirmed.
Okay, thank you.
Barbara, then Sheila.
So I've been following a particular school in Dawson County, Georgia, that has a really good graphic once a week. Every Tuesday, they put up this graphic of how many students have tested positive, how many teachers, staff have tested positive, and how many of each are quarantined. So I'll forward that to you. And I think that's, if we could do something like that, just pick a day of the week that we would post our weekly numbers so that we can just kind of see over time how we're doing. That would be great.
Okay, Sheila?
I have 2 things. One is, Dr. Cochran, I just want to tell you how refreshing it is to hear you say that you're going into the schools regularly. It's just, thank you. It's just very refreshing. I'm sorry?
If you, if I see more than 3 principals in one day, you know what kind of day it's been.
No,
Because this is why we do this, for the kids and the teachers and the
Right.
paras and what we see. And I truly enjoy it, but thank you. I appreciate your
I
comment.
appreciate that you're going around and checking things out. But my second thing is, Kim, is I'd like to make a motion to allow the chair to sign the TSSU MOU.
Thank you, because I keep forgetting and I had it written right here. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Kristen seconds. Any discussion? Kat,
Shall we
could you
tell
take-
people what it's about?
Well, it's the same thing as the TTA, only it's the paras.
It's
okay.
Yeah, it's just a memorandum of understanding regarding change to working conditions as a result of COVID that's been negotiated with the TSSU. Is that fair to say? Okay.
Thank you.
Kat, can you take the vote, please? Did we lose Kat?
She can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
I missed, like I said, it's going out for a 20-second increment. So I just sort of stood here and watched it come
All right.
back and-
So the motion is to authorize the chair to sign the MOU for the TSSU. So we're just looking for a vote now. I think it was Sheila and Kristen.
Yeah, I did get that part. It was the discussion after, so we're good.
Hurry before we lose you.
Exactly. Mr. Boyle,
No.
Mr. Doobie, not here. Dr. Farah,
Yes.
Mrs. Kishka,
Yes.
Ms. Lowe's,
Yes.
Bachmer,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
No.
Mrs. Savage,
Yes.
Mrs. Silva.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else? Kristen, did you have something?
I just had a quick question under other business, if I can, for Dr. Cochran. I know I've mentioned this to you before, and I just didn't know if there was any follow-up on this. But with everything that's going on with sports, with activities in school, we're trying to keep the spectators to home spectators only and not have visiting spectators from other schools come to Timberlane. And vice versa, Timberlane is not supposed to be going to other schools. So what other schools are able to do is live stream many of the events so that it keeps our Timberlane people home. And I know, so we don't have to go to those schools and vice versa, so we're not crossing over. We are able to do it, my understanding, from anything that's at the football field and anything that's indoors in the gym. We can video and get the live stream out. We've been doing it with volleyball. I'm going to assume they're going to do it with football this weekend, which is great because it keeps the spectator number down. The problem that we're seeing as some parents is that we're having other parents from other schools come to soccer games because we're unable to do anything in live stream or get any video out from our soccer field. Can this be looked at? Because again, I'm sure, I mean, it's not something that can be done right away, but is there a temporary fix? Is there something we can do? This could be an ongoing problem into the spring. And then you're going to talk about girls lacrosse and other issues out there. So is it really something, I mean, I don't know how big of a project it is. It seems relatively minor to run some conduit out there. And I mean, you already have the shed out there. So is this something we can look into where we're saving money on busing and other things right now?
So
Yeah.
if you don't mind, Dr. Cochran, can I speak to that for 1 second?
Sure.
So Kristen, to your question, I've actually been in contact with Dean and Ken Henderson about this. It was brought up about 2 weeks ago. And Stephen, the in-house electrician, is actually researching what it would cost to get it out to the shed, if you call it, on the soccer field. And then what we could do if we can trench from the press box, because that's where all that equipment is, up to that soccer field and also down to the field hockey field. So we are definitely looking into it. It was just brought to my attention about 2 weeks ago. So it is being looked at.
Mr. Fantasia and I have had a conversation. I believe, Jeff, correct me or provide information if you can. At one point in time, there was a discussion about a $5,000 cost that was related to the live streaming. I believe Mr. Fantasia indicated that he thought he could find it in his budget. Given the situation, I think the more things we have to get excited about and cheer about as it relates to our school and our children and our community, the better. And can I task you with working with Mr. Fantasia to see what the costs would be and where we might find the appropriate funds for that? And I'd say make it a priority. I know you have a lot on your plate already.
I can do that, and I think it's important. And Kristen, to let you know, one of the issues I know that we've had in the past with live streaming is that we only have so many channels that we can put out, if you will. And the option that I believe Mr. Fantasia was looking at would actually allow us to use a separate channel, if you will, to be able to do multiple live streams to be able to deliver those out there. So if we could do something like that, that'd be good.
And that's, I mean, to let you know, other schools were also doing Facebook Live. Just things, I mean, anything they can to just get on and get something out there. So again, it keeps the spectators, it keeps people from sneaking onto all the campuses because it's happening. And I think everyone's trying to be respectful, but in the same, it's hard when you have a kid that's a senior or a freshman and they're playing in a game. You don't want them going to a contact sport without a parent there or being able to see stuff. And so just, if we can do it, I'm not, I'm not saying break the bank, but if it's something that can be done. And like I said, if this goes on into the spring, I mean, if you have the conduit out to the soccer shed, you can get the lacrosse and potentially the baseball. And Gary, I'm sure you're going to have to look at, and I apologize, I didn't mention field hockey for fall, but then you have softball that's down there too. So, I mean, but as you said, Dr. Cochran, anything that for the students too, they want to watch their friends play. They want to see what's going on. They want to be able to talk about it. So I just think it's a positive thing for many reasons if we can do it.
Okay, Jen?
Thanks, Kristen. I was going to say, don't forget about baseball and softball. That will probably be an issue as well. Yes, districts don't have any information on their district pages about spectators from other schools. Spectators from other schools have been coming to Timberlane. Timberlane parents have been going to other schools. I feel like there is a bit of a disparity here where we are saying we can have over 100 spectators at a football game because you're talking about a team that has a tremendous amount of players. You're talking about 2 parents for every band member, and you're talking about 2 parents for every cheer team member. So it just seems like I just don't know where this information comes from. if you're inside, I know some schools are doing wristbands inside to be able to monitor how many parents are there. But if we are outside and people are sitting 6 feet apart and people are required to wear masks, I'm not really seeing how this is such a problem to have spectators at sports. These kids don't have very many games. It's a really challenging year. I don't think anybody's talking about being unsafe, but if we can have 100 people at a football game, I don't know why we're restricting all these other sports.
I think Jen makes a good point. Dr. Cochran, can you just take a look at that to make sure that we're equitable? If I agree, if you have football with band and football and cheerleaders, then field hockey women should be able to have parents that are standing apart. So,
well, no, they do. They have 2 parents. Everybody has 2 parents, but I mean, this point of not being able to watch your kids play when parents are coming from other schools anyway, they're coming regardless.
Okay.
It's happening.
All right.
Jen, can I check and make sure that I understand your issue? If we can allow 2 parents per player, per cheer person, per band member for football, and we only allow 2 parents for a sport where we have far fewer participants, it's a self-imposed inequity?
It's
In terms,
to me, if we're talking about safety, this was put in place because we're talking about safety. So regardless of how many parents or spectators, if you're saying it's safe for 100 spectators to be at a football game outside, I don't know why it's not safe for 100 spectators to be at soccer, at track, at field hockey, baseball, softball, whatever the sport is. It just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, that was my point, that if we could have that raw number for football, then if we cap it at 2.
I don't even think it's about capping a number, honestly. I think it's about, and I've been attending sporting events all summer long. It's about being safe and respectful, respecting the space, wearing the masks, and being safe so that we're not putting people, at risk.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm ready to adjourn. Have a nice night, everybody.
Thank you.
Night.
Bye.
Good night.